is there anything you found in this process that biology got wrong? You know, you're designing a being from scratch. What could humans have that you're like, oh, this is for sure going on the robot?
Now, I'm not sure that it's that nature got it wrong, but Isaac has a telescoping body, so it can expand to a human level of height when it's useful, and then self-compact when it's not needed at all. And I think one of the core bets behind the product design with Isaac is that it should feel like it naturally integrates into your home, and that means being unobtrusive when it's not needed. So, yeah.
I have
That's
thought
what I would
about
point
that.
to.
Like, if people end up getting humanoid robots in their house, where does that guy live? I have not thought about this until just now. Do they have like a little room or a closet?
The Optimus backs up onto a wall charger and is like standing like 70% prostrate just in the corner.
Interesting. All right, welcome back to another episode of Out of Office. You've got me and Jack, of course, but the most interesting person you're going to see here is Evan, the founder of Robotics. Evan, how are you?
Doing well. Thanks for having me, y'all.
Yeah, we're happy to have you. This is Evan's first podcast. He just told me that 5 seconds ago, so let's see how this goes. He jumped in, high energy, smiling, so I think it's going to be great.
I'm pumped. I've known you for what is it now? Like 8 months, Kartik, since we went public.
The company is Robotics. Instead of having Evan tell us about it, I mean, he will in a second, we're just going to go to a great 1-minute video they just put out. This is Isaac, their home robot. Check it out for yourself, and I will describe it for our listeners. Okay, Isaac's getting up. It's a pretty traditional SF founder's apartment, kind of dirty. Shoes are gone. Amazon boxes are gone. Entryway is fully tidied up. Okay, some mail's being arranged. Boxes are being taken out. Coats are being hung, apparently. Hung off screen, though, so we'll ask where they actually went. Okay, dining table.
Right next to where
very small objects, like 1 by 1 inch objects being put into a basket, dragged away. Dining table chairs are being pushed into place. This is fascinating. I love this.
What do you think of my co-founder's stuffed animal?
Where is it? I can't even see it.
It was tidied up.
Oh, it's gone.
Wow. I think it's that good.
It's that good. Okay, coffee table, couch area, dining table again.
There's
Wow,
2 chairs
flower
still out.
place.
We'll see if Isaac gets them. Okay. Amazing.
Okay. Pretty solid, pretty solid. Jack, I think, is that the first time you've seen that video?
I watched half of it. I was on their website. I read through your website.
Okay, first impressions, what do you think?
It's amazing because I'll tell you a funny story. Like 20 years ago when the Roomba came out, I told my mom we were getting her the best Christmas present possible. She thought it was a ring. You know, she had been asking my dad for like a nice new ring or something. And we hyped this up for a month, and she got a Roomba, and she was pissed. I've never seen my mom mad on Christmas. So I got Roomba vibes initially because it has a dock. It kind of comes back to life, but it's amazing. I mean, it literally goes from like a little box, it looks like, to this basically humanoid robot that rolls around and puts your stuff away. If you guys saw the video, that's insane. I love it. It's like the Roomba, but now it actually tidies up the whole place. It doesn't just vacuum things off the floor. So I love it. I think it's very cool.
You like the form factor?
I thought, dude, so cool. So cool.
I'm glad.
All right, cool. Evan, tell us what we just saw.
Yeah, so that is the first fully integrated version of our Isaac prototype. Isaac is the robot that we're making it leave. We want it to be a general purpose robot that's purpose-built for the home. And we want it to do a few things autonomously out of the gate. Folding your laundry, we want it to tidy up floors and surfaces. And we also want it to be what we call like a second caretaker for your home that you can like engage in like a Q&A with, so that you can understand things like, did I leave my iPad next to my bed? What do I have in my fridge to cook dinner with tonight? And what you saw is the very first time that we've kind of come up for air since we raised funds last fall and got to building. And hopefully people, especially those who reserved the very first one, feel like it has like line of sight on what we've said from the beginning we want to ship to people later this year.
Okay, so I want to ask maybe some specific questions. All the little things on the table, how long does it take you to get that? Because, I mean, we're really describing things that are maybe 2 by 2 inches, pretty small. And I haven't seen anything like that.
Yeah, so to be clear, like right from the gate, we're actually exercising our remote teleoperation stack there. So
Okay.
we've actually built this from the ground up such that we can remotely control an Isaac so that we can complete any task that you deploy your Isaac on, and you can trust that like it has this fail-safe ability, literally no matter what. And that's actually why we also made sure to make it a general purpose thing. It's funny that you like bring up the Roomba, but like, limited purpose robots are the only robots that have kind of found a place in the home, and I think it's because they're masters of one trade. And increasingly we know that like advances in modeling capability are going to get to the point where with the right body, robots can do actually a long tail of tasks. So what we're doing with Isaac is we're making the bet that delivering a product that, has the physical affordances to do like valuable stuff in your home will, with a few well-chosen autonomous tasks initially, like folding your laundry and then picking things up off of floors and surfaces, will be enough to add value for people. And then we can also do other things that people request, so long as it's physically embodied to do so with teleoperation like you saw in that video.
Amazing. What is that journey of getting here? You've coming up for air after raising that money. It's been a little while. Kind of give us a sense of that timeline. How do you start to getting a robot that's literally tidying up your house?
Yeah, since we raised funds, immediately what we did was we got to looking for our team and our office space. And I think one of the really cool things that I feel pretty grateful for is the team that we've assembled. So we're now a team of 11. Building in San Francisco, we found an amazing office with over 10,000 square feet, which has proven totally necessary for all the different things that we have to do. We had most of our team by December after raising funds over September and October. And it actually proved to be maybe not as challenging as it is for others to scale up that quickly. A lot of people were really drawn to the mission that we have to build like a practical, capable, and safe, purpose-built for the home general purpose robot. And we really got building like in full force in January, and this is what we were able to produce in a couple of months. We've actually made some iterations even since the hardware that you saw in this video. But after we had our team in place, we had to kind of reify the hardware vision that we put out in our marketing. So we knew what we wanted to build when we raised funds last fall. And we actually made a research grade prototype last summer while we were part of the Y Combinator Accelerator here in San Francisco. But the very first thing that we did was go after the different sub-assemblies that comprise this like really complicated thing, this general purpose home robot, as quickly as possible. Get to, and this is a typical thing in hardware cycles, get to the most real version of that as quickly as possible, because a lot of other things depend on it. We actually have done a remarkable number of things in-house to kind of vertically integrate with the product. Shortly thereafter after kind of aligning as a team on the overall hardware form, design Isaac's control stack, controllers and drivers, as well as its necessary safety features, and then collecting embodied data on both.
Can I pause you there? So when you say you picked a form for it, okay, so in the video you have Isaac holding out, he's got arms, he's got a head, he's scooting around on the floor. How do you make those decisions, right? So other humanoids people have seen are maybe like Tesla's. It just looks like a human, it has legs, everything. And so how do you kind of come to those decisions to pick how Isaac looks and how he gets around?
Yeah, I think that legs are actually like a great place to start. We want Isaac to be as general purpose as possible so that it can be as useful as possible for the wide range of things that people might want a robot to do for them in a dynamic environment like the home. So we started with thinking, how do we get to the most distilled version of a general purpose form factor as possible? And that led us immediately to the question of absolutely need legs for a very first version of this robot. And the answer that we at least arrived at is no. Not because we have anything against them, but because bipedal robots have a lot more complexity to contend with. They not only have, they don't passively balance, for instance, as Isaac does, which is, a key safety consideration when you're putting something of a pretty significant weight in the home. That's one of the ways that we settle on this form factor.
Do you run into the problem of, I saw it was on wheels, granted stairs exist, is that something you guys have in mind? And then also, like, I know Roombas, for example, they have the classic stuck on a little lip. Do you guys run into that issue? Do you use bigger wheels? How do you guys get around those issues?
Yeah, Isaac won't actually scale stairs for the V1. But frankly, bipedal robots aren't going to easily be scaling stairs 100% of the time in 2025 or 26 either. It's not to say that we don't care about that. We know that people have multi-level homes and we eventually want to get to that. But the core bet of our company is that there is a version of a general purpose robot that is distilled down to its bare essence, and critically that is safe, that doesn't like topple easily. And so it's a decision that we made in the short term, but absolutely something that in future revs we'd care about.
Cool. And then you talk about general purpose, which I think is a great way to talk about it. What do you constitute as general purpose? Because obviously that informed what the form factor was. So you came into this thing, you had a list, or how did you go from I want to build a robot to this is what the robot's going to do and this is how I'm going to design the form factor?
Yeah, general purpose broadly implies what it sounds like, that you're well suited to a wide variety or general suite of tasks. And this is a place where, roboticists historically take some inspiration from biology. And in this way, we didn't make any ultra complicated decisions around like the actual manipulators that Isaac has. So its arms, which we do design in-house, nonetheless aren't, they do resemble like a biological form, because that's actually proven rather useful for a lot of the things that you might need to reach or manipulate around the home. The end effectors that we chose, which are actually grippers, have proven that they get a lot of things done while being much less complicated to actually control, and critically control autonomously as well. Every single joint that you introduce is another part of your, you could say, action space. Like the things that if you were autonomously controlling a robot have to be like predicted in advance for continuous useful motion. So every single subassembly on the robot was a decision, and you kind of just have to navigate it as best you can while keeping in mind the specific tasks that you want to start with first. So it helped that we actually picked the things that we want Isaac to autonomously do in the home, like folding your laundry, and then being able to like reach onto the ground and manipulate a wide variety of objects. That, for instance, makes something like reach extremely important. You also have to consider the weight and the center of mass of the manipulator too, when considering the power and torque ratings that go into actuators, the motors that move like a given subassembly.
Yeah, makes sense. And then is there anything you found in this process that biology got wrong? You're designing a being from scratch. What could humans have that you're like, oh, this is for sure going on the robot?
Well, you actually kind of hit on one, and I'm not sure that it's that nature got it wrong, but Isaac has a telescoping body, so it can expand to a human level of height when it's useful, and then self-compact when it's not needed at all. And I think one of the core bets behind the product design with Isaac is that it should feel like it naturally integrates into your home, and that actually means being unobtrusive when it's not needed, and collapsing away onto Isaac's charger so that it can kind of self-stow. We think that just makes things a little bit more delightful. So, yeah,
I have
that's
thought
one
about
that I would
that.
point
Like, people end up getting like, humanoid robots in their house. Where does that guy live? I have not thought about this until just now. Do they have like a little room or a closet? I don't know.
The Optimus backs up onto a wall charger and is like standing like 70% prostrate just in the corner.
Interesting. That feels kind of scary. That's a cool idea with Isaac. Okay, let me think where I want to go from here. So I want to think of practical robots that people have in the home right now. So Jack mentioned a Roomba. I mean, really hate-love relationship. I mean, the most sold vacuums by a large margin are now robot vacuums, not handheld vacuums. I was reminded of that when I think everyone was watching this. I don't know if you guys saw this Dyson unveiling recently. He did like an Apple-style presentation for new Dyson vacuums. And they're incredible. I mean, they're so tiny, they're powerful. They solved like the whole hair problem with it. But then everyone's asking is like, why are they doing this? With a mix of reactions. I mean, everyone is used to robots now. And other people said, well, maybe my robot will use a Dyson vacuum. And then this middle area of pucks sliding across the floor were completely useless, which I think is interesting too. But, in my house, I used to just vacuum all the time. I have a Dyson vacuum, and that's what I always did. Met the founder of Matic Robots, which is a cute little white robot that goes around your house and vacuums the floor. But it's still very much a Roomba competitor. It is that form factor. It just looks cuter, which is actually a big deal. I think Roombas are really ugly. I have a similar reaction that Jack's mom has. Get this ugly puck out of my house. Whereas a Matic is kind of friendly. It gives you more of I don't want to say Wall-E, but it's kind of cute, and it walks around, and my son's a year and a half, and he loves it. He's always bullying it now. And so it gets the job done. It vacuums, it mops, but it's not perfect. There's a crevice here, a crevice there. I can't clean the corners of my kitchen. There's all these problems where I still think in the back of my head, this hasn't finished the job. If you think of it very simply, this has a job to do, hasn't finished the job, and the answer is simply no. And, if I didn't meet the founder, if I wasn't into trying new devices, I think it's, somewhere from $1,000 to $2,000. I'd probably return it just because it simply doesn't, I can't say I'm done cleaning if I just run the Matic. And so I guess how do you think about that with Isaac? What are the jobs that you think it'll fully complete? And how much have maybe home robots like the Roomba, Matic, or maybe others that have inspired you where you think about as maybe competitors or other devices in the space?
Yeah. I think that this is the all-important question, and I think that it is one of the reasons that only limited-purpose robots have really found any home, pun sort of intended, in that dynamic of a place. You pick something and you try to do it as well as possible, because frankly, every single home is different from the one right next door, and it's different from day to literal day.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things that I think makes this a really hard problem to solve, that it's an extremely dynamic environment. It's literally not made for the robot's benefit like a warehouse is. When we thought about what Isaac would do, we thought it was really important to do things that are valuable for people. And you kind of have the familiar refrain of doing laundry, of tidying up after people on floors and surfaces, just because of reasons of entropy, stuff lands on the floor and parents are tired of stepping on Legos. You have other contenders too, like taking out the trash, like cleaning and cooking. So there has to be some intersection between the things that are really, really valuable to people and what your thing does. But yeah, I think that there's another part of your question to kind of confront there, which is how will Isaac actually crack that? And I think that this is why we have tried to be extremely focused in the first things that we promise Isaac will do autonomously, but then build it to be general purpose such that with task completion via teleoperation, you can get the ball over the line literally no matter what. We were, as far as I know, one of the first, if not the first people to show a robot repeatedly fold a t-shirt last summer at the Y Combinator investor reception. Got line of sight last summer that we know how to do this, and it's a matter of acquiring and collecting well-chosen data in a growing number of environments. We've designed our hardware such that we can then do that second task that I listed autonomously, which was tidying up and picking things up off the ground and then putting them where they eventually go in your home. There are other things like a notion of memory that are implied there that we can talk about later if you want. But I'll note one key thing about both of these, which is that they are both sort of asynchronous tasks. They are not things that people depend on getting done immediately. What matters is that when I get home, my stuff is folded. What matters is that by the time that I wake up in the morning, there's nothing to step over at 6 a.m. as I try to prepare for my family. And we thought that that was one of the things that made these sweet spot problems for us to go after, because they're valuable to people, and it's okay if Isaac takes time to do that task.
I see.
I'm actually very curious about, so you started with a fairly narrow scope of things, it sounds like folding laundry, picking things up, putting them away. But first off, did I represent that correctly? Or did I totally compact down what you can do?
No, that's exactly right. With one addition, which is that kind of caretaker category that I mentioned earlier, where you'll be able to sort of deploy Isaac to different places in your home that it'll have mapped and can travel to, and that it can retrieve objects for you and bring them to other places. It can even just take photos for you simply so that you have peace of mind that your pet has food. You have a second set of eyes around your home as well. But yeah, those are the things that we wanted to do autonomously at first.
Okay, and I'm curious, I mean, this is like, you could ask this question about the Roomba as well. When it learns your house, assuming you're taking advantage of some of the newer AI models, is there like a fine tune that gets added on top of the model? Like you have a robot model and then you fine tune it based on the house and the crevices. Like, how do you go about taking this model and basically making it remember the house and actually do well in the house?
Yeah, great question. So there absolutely has to be like an onboard memory of your actual home. And so one of the things that's key about Isaac is we are shipping it with onboard compute that has enough storage space such that we can map your home and that data does not leave your device. And we can eventually understand like the semantics of your home, like where your living room is, and eventually where objects belong to. And so that's one of the ways that we get line of sight into the particulars of your home. And then of course there's also the notion of like getting more and more competent in the place that you see every day. This gets more into questions about our modeling stack and like how we actually manipulate the objects that we are actually encountering in your home. And that's a question of how well does your model generalize. And that's one of the key things that we think redounds to our benefit having chosen a very specific set of tasks so that we can deliver those really, really well for people before expanding to many, many more.
Got it. That makes sense. And as far as where the laundry goes, I can understand, like, yeah, it can fold laundry really well. It can put things away. How does it know where that stuff goes? Like, I imagine there is a training step where the human has to show it, or what is that? I don't know if I'm getting into questions that nobody cares about. This is like super interesting to me. How do you go from zero to knowing where the laundry goes, basically?
Yeah, in short, there has to be like an onboarding experience where you kind of say what's what about your home, where things belong. That's kind of central to the notion of tidying up. If things are where they're not supposed to be, they ought to go to someplace nominally better. And that intersects more with the like mapping and localization stack that I was referring to earlier, by which Isaac navigates around your home. There will also be a higher level, there will also be a whole component to our modeling stack that is capable of high-level planning tasks in response to user requests. One of the other things that I should say that we think is going to be really delightful about having one of these in your home is that you will be able to like talk to your Isaac too. It will have a natural language interface. You'll be able to send it commands, but also just like talk with it either via the companion app or by speaking. And so I think that that's where users will actually add a lot of the information too that's necessary for completing these tasks.
Sure.
How do you envision that? How do you envision that communication? Don't think about how it'll start. I'm sure there's technical limitations. You're a smaller team. You need to think about what's a priority. But I can imagine it just being like Google Home or Siri, where you're just saying like, Isaac, do this thing. Isaac, do that. But since it has a body, I'm wondering how much you think about it, feeling natural or like a person, or maybe not a person, but like, do you remember those Sony like Aibo dogs, or like just giving it kind of a personality? Like, how important is that, and kind of what is your vision for Isaac going forward?
Yeah, so I think there's two questions in there. Like, what will it feel like to talk to Isaac in terms of its personality, and then also how does that factor into how it actually understands what you're telling it to do? Sure. Are both of those fair? Yeah. We do think that Isaac needs to have some amount of personality. So Isaac will have a vision language model, and that'll be the component that primarily responds to you and understands whether you're actually just trying to talk with it or if you're trying to tell it to do something. And there will be downstream components that'll be responsible for understanding whether that's a task that Isaac's embodied to do, that's safe, things of that sort. Personality, I think, will be something that we want users to have the ability to customize to. I think that this should be something that, because it occupies a real place of trust in somebody's home, they also ought to have the ability to kind of make their own. And this is something that I think we're in the early innings of with AI generally, but will be, I think, really important for the feeling that these robots ought to have. We want Isaac to feel clearly like it's a tool. I think that our design is a a big component in how we want it to feel, but we don't want it to feel cold. It's an extension of you, and if you also want it to behave like a certain way within reasonable like limits, we ought to allow you to customize it.
I see. Okay. So it'll be friendly, but you think you'll still be on that side of the line where like this is a robot, like this is a tool or like a robot in your like a machine in your house meant to do things, or do you think you'll cross that boundary where I don't know, this is like the Jetsons, and this is like a robot that you have somewhat of a relationship with?
I think that interactions with systems like Claude get this pretty close to right in my experience already, where talking with these things, you can ask it to sort of impersonate in a way that is valuable to you in the moment, but at the end of the day, these systems most of the time reiterate that they're there to serve you and understand you and help with your needs. So I think that there is plenty to play with there around being whatever it is that you require in that moment, perhaps accumulating like long-running context about you and your preferences. But then, yeah, I think at the end of the day, being yours and being an extension of you, that's how it should feel.
Great.
Do you think there's an angle there where if you learn, for example, there's a family of 4, and Isaac talks a little bit differently to the young daughter, the 5-year-old daughter. There might be magic there that makes Isaac stand out as the Jetson sort of robot. Is that something you guys think about, or am I just like way off the rails there?
No, absolutely. I think that that's something that we think about all the time. We're focused not just on these functional things that Isaac will do, but it does need to enrich lives as well as get tasks done. And I think that distinction is kind of behind what you're asking. We think about it a lot.
Oh, very cool.
And so, Evan, you mentioned that some of this is going to be autonomous. There's going to be some teleoperation. Without getting too much in the weeds, how do you think about safety? Because I can start thinking like, okay, I'm gone. Go do this task in the house. Is there just like a person in my house that's controlling a robot now and can like just go loose? Like, that's like probably a fear that's going to come up with teleoperation, almost even more so than automation. So how do you kind of think about that?
Yeah, one of the first things that I'll say is that actually when we talk people through what this looks like today, you are either handing a literal human who can leave your house, by the way, the keys, or you're trusting them in basically the exact same way, but with no ability to supervise without also installing cameras. One of the things that you'll be able to do with your Isaac is actually ride along and see what Isaac sees and understand what its human operator is doing if you've delegated a task to them, so that you can have peace of mind. You don't have to take anybody's word for anything.
Interesting. I guess to dig a little deeper. So, the comparison is someone comes into kind of my house to do some work. They're only here for a couple hours or a day, or even it's many days. I think I know when they're here, I know when they're not. And the advantage of a human is when they're gone, like they're gone. I imagine Isaac, is going to be installed 24/7 and available. And yeah, so I'm just curious, like there's going to be this thought in the back of some people's heads, or even in mine sometimes from a security perspective. I don't know. I probably know the person that's in my house for a couple hours, maybe not, I don't know, or a friend recommended them to come over. Who knows the relationship, but there's some trust maybe. Whereas I trust you, and I might trust the robot, but I imagine you, Evan, are not doing all the teleoperation calls. And so we have no idea who these people are. What are the boundaries of them like just doing something like insane? How do you think about that? Because I imagine if you give them full control, like they could just trash your house and just F off, So how does that work?
Yeah, Isaac will only be able to act in response to a request that you actually make or that you schedule. And you, as I said before, you won't have to take anybody's word for it. And I think that there's also, the opportunity to supervise this as well. If you do want to have some sort of peace of mind. As for will there be a human operating the robot? If that's required to accomplish the task that you ask, yes.
Yeah. Okay, interesting. And is there anything, I'm wondering if there's anything interesting technically that you could do around safety or guardrails while a human's operating it, or is it more, hey, you've asked for something, opt into this, a human's going to go do it. So if you're paranoid, watch the feed, and if you're not, then of course. Most people will not be, I think, and we'll just let it happen. How do you think about that?
I think that there is a ton of room to ask for the minimum of authorization, I suppose, when people ask for a certain task to be completed around the home. And to, in the way that, models today sort of perform chain of thought, explain what Isaac believes needs to be done if it's behaving autonomously, or even to narrate as it's being teleoperated too. I think that there are tons of other ways that you can also build trust into this, or rather make this trustless by making clear where Isaac can go in order to comply with a task.
Sure.
And I think that there are other things too that you can do, like that amount to like pseudonymization of the home, removing details wherever possible that aren't important for complying with whatever the task is.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, imagine it. Hey, Isaac, go do the dishes, and it starts throwing something. It's like, okay, throwing something is not mandatory. Maybe, shut this down. Flag this operator for review.
Well, I'm curious. What do you all think about that? Like, what kinds of because at the end of the day, there is a little bit of an assumption on our part that users will ask for things that they truly want. There will also, I think, we're also actively thinking about the ways that we have to make sure that Isaac can, as it will inevitably be, messed with without repercussions. But, what kinds of things would y'all expect?
Yeah, so there's definitely, I mean, we'll get to exciting stuff. So I'll give you one other, what are the other, negative scenarios I'm kind of dreaming up in my head when this thing is in my house. So, I have a young kid. I'll have another soon, and so they're going to be crawling or running around the house. There's not a scenario where, I guess at some point, I don't know, I'll be upstairs, Isaac will be downstairs, Maya will be downstairs, and they'll be interacting in some way, or, just doing something in the same room. And that scenario, I guess, so forget about, technical safety or teleoperation. What about just physical safety? How much does Isaac weigh? Or ballpark of what you think a unit in a house would weigh?
Yeah, it depends on final assembly details, but it could be anywhere from 40 to 60 pounds. Yeah.
Okay, sure. And so, how do you think about that? Whether it's a kid or a baby, or honestly, even an adult. I mean, these robots are pretty big. Who knows what they could do?
Totally.
So, how do you think about physical safety? I guess.
Yeah, one of the things that you have to think about when designing these is passive safety.
Sure.
Before you're actually even being super active. So this is one of the reasons why we care about toppling risk. This is one of the reasons why we sleep better at night knowing that we're going to the wheeled base at first. There are other things too, what actuators do you use to power the motion of the robot when it's even acting dynamically? There is this property called backdrivability of motors that allows them to actually have force exerted back upon them, and for them to sort of be compliant in response as opposed to continuing to push forward and being too difficult to force back, which would be important if you were ever to come into contact with the robot. So these are some of the things that are physical properties that you have to think about really deeply when designing a system like this. There are also other ways that we are vertically integrating to make sure that we get this right by designing our own control systems, so that we actually give you the option, for instance, to programmatically say when Isaac even can operate, such that if there's another human in the room, maybe Isaac actually has to home instead of continuing with the task, so that there's little left to doubt.
I see. Okay, cool. Yeah, so to flip the script a little bit and talk about some of the things I'm excited about. So I guess, I put in a reservation for an Isaac with seeing almost next to nothing. I mean, I'm an early adopter. I've always wanted a robot in my house. I think this is going to be cool. I think it was $1,000. Do you have an idea of, what is the estimate of the final price? Just so we can kind of ground this for listeners.
Yeah. It's going to be in the tens of thousands of dollars because it's going to be a premium, first of its kind product that also needs to last you for years. We have to charge the things that allow us to build it with quality, so that you get a lot of miles out of it and that it's safe to continuously have.
Do you think it's closer to $20,000 or $50,000?
It'll be closer to $50,000. Yeah.
Okay, sure. Okay, interesting. And so then I've been excited about, the tidying is incredible. I mean, that's a thing that a vacuum will never do, and is probably more important. Because actually, if you got the tidying done, I could vacuum in a handful of minutes. And so tidying is really interesting. And it's funny because in the interim, when I ordered Isaac, I don't think we had any help at home. But now, Maya's getting older, so he needs to go out while we're working, and we have a nanny. our nanny also does the dishes and does the laundry when he's sleeping. And so, I mean, I don't know, average nanny in San Francisco, let's call it anywhere from $30,000 to $70,000, depending on what you want a year. And so now that spend is already gone, like she's doing that. It doesn't mean the house is perfect. Like she's not that clean, to be really clear with you. And so it's like those tasks get done. You know, my time of his life, that's the primary task. Clothes get folded and put away, dishes get done, but like just random tidying around the house, and I guess 24/7. So how do your early reservation holders? What do they look like? Obviously, there's going to be this cohort of just like early adopters. Robots sound cool. I want to buy that. I don't know how interesting that is to you, but maybe what have other people been telling you? Like, they're really excited for Isaac to do.
Yeah, we do have 3 buckets of early reservation holders. We have the early adopters, and we have some like really cool people in that camp too. Like,
sure,
working at like some big name firms in the Valley, or people like with their almost own brand. The second cohort are, I think, tech savvy parents who oftentimes, in basically every single case that I've personally talked to, already have help around the home, but who have a family and want something to combat the entropy of their life. That's bucket 2.
Sure.
And then the third bucket are people with mobility challenges.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
And another thing I think, like thinking very optimistically about Isaac, when I almost want to dream of a scenario where he's interacting with the kids. I'm not worried about safety anymore. There's scenarios where you see Isaac and like kids like stuck in a chair. He can help them somehow. Where it's like really is getting close quarters with things and helping in a scenario that you may not be to help with, or even reactively. Right now, I imagine you kind of want people to ask Isaac what to do or schedule it. But if there's a scenario where like, oh, like this giant, you're picking this giant package up. And like you're kind of stumbling. It's like, oh, Isaac, hey, I mean, I'm pretty strong. Like comes over and just like helps you without you having to yell, like, come help me. What, are you starting to think about maybe like proactive things Isaac could do or get to? Because that would be pretty cool.
I think that it's not just cool, it's also an important part of the vision. I think that Isaac and personal home robots from the get-go need to be extensions of you that help you get more done and more safely too. Like I think that for this to be a success, a personal home robot has to kind of make your home run better, full stop, and maybe even be safer too. I think that especially at the beginning, as we're introducing this first of its kind product category, you'll have to be extremely careful about those kinds of assistive moments. But that's also where much of the promise lays too. So I think that it has to be taken case by case. Especially, I mean, so many scenarios come to mind when helping with people with mobility needs. For whom these could be long tail situations and how you could possibly help.
Okay. And then how do you think about like the long tail of activities that Isaac might do? I'm just imagining my house right now. And you said he's 50, 60 pounds, so not that crazy to pick up if you want to. So if I haul him up the stairs and go put him on my small patio, which has some plants, they are not taken care of because I just don't have the time. And so I've really but I'd like it to be great. This is like an actual interesting scenario with money because I don't want to pay a gardener. I have no interest in getting a gardener because that's what I would need to take care of this, like the plants in the patio if I wanted to look amazing. Could I just haul him up here and like start teaching him or teleoping him to do this and now all of a sudden, just get a gardener for free?
That is kind of one of the things that we hope is emergent in the fullness of time from the general purpose form factor. This is the reason to do the hard thing and not build a limited purpose form factor, which would be much easier to nail on the first try.
For sure.
That's one of the reasons why much of the value of your Isaac will be in the very beginning if we've chosen our first tasks right, but actually as it graduates to even greater and greater levels of capability too. So the whole point is that it's embodied to do that for you. Yeah.
Okay, cool. And then, if we are teleoping for different tasks, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. What I'm imagining is I ask Isaac to do something, can't do it autonomously, you queue up someone to teleop it. How does that work as a business for you? Like, are these a bunch of contractors? Are they people at the office? Like, how do you think about that? And then how does that work into the cost? Is that going to be bundled into this, heavy upfront cost, or is that going to be something, on top of that as well?
Yeah, well, I think that there will definitely be special treatment for first customers. We give a lot of consideration to the fact that the people who first believed in us decided to be a part of the journey. I think that, in a sense, teleoperation constitutes like usage for something that we didn't necessarily anticipate or say Isaac was going to do autonomously at first. And so it makes some sense that maybe Weave charges for that something nominal, but we're still figuring that out actually
Sure.
as we like actually develop the product.
Okay. And do you have a good sense of how teleoperation is going to work for the teleoperator? Because, for example, we have a friend, me and Jack are both Founders Inc. guys, and there's a company there, the guy's name is Six. He's basically building the real version of Real Steel. So like robots fighting and they're piloted by human operators. And when we talked about it, there's something about a headset and controllers. Like you said, I mean, it's super hard to get the legs right because there's no sensor on your legs, and it would be lame to wear. If you need to wear a $100,000 suit to get every input, then that kind of defeats the purpose. And so, you found a shortcut around like maybe the legs, but yeah, what is a teleoperator even going to be wearing? Like, what tools do they need to teleoperate Isaac?
Yeah, we've custom built our own teleoperation rigs, we call them, to be able to collect like sufficiently correct kinematic commands. What do I mean by that? What I mean is like we actually want the things with which we send commands to your Isaac to exactly kinematically in their form resemble the robot. And the operator has visuals on a screen that allow them to navigate the scene, and then they use this rig to send commands to the robot. And we've designed this for both mobility and then extremely dexterous manipulation. And the key there is that we actually have equipment that allows us to precisely know exactly where the arm should be going. And we've architected our teleoperation system then to be extremely low latency and robust. And we're operating it over a wide area network already every day so that it's extremely performant for you.
Okay, so I have
It's a kind of surreal
about...
thing. I'll say too,
Yeah.
like watching somebody teleoperate over WAN and doing it yourself. It feels extremely futuristic in this otherwise sort of you could say mundane setting. It is supposedly just a home, but it actually feels totally surreal to watch it happen.
The real world becomes a video game to the teleoperator. It's very interesting. I want to know how you got here, how you went from somebody who presumably grew up, from a baby to now, and then somewhere along the line you decided to start a robot company. What was like your introduction to entrepreneurship? How did you decide you wanted to build robots? What was going through YC like? Very curious about your founder journey.
Yeah, I came to founding after spending a lot of time working at Apple. Actually,
Okay.
My path here definitely runs through that company and the jobs that I was working there. The very last thing that I was working on was actually Apple Intelligence. I was one of the lead PMs working on privacy and security and the runtime for that project. And prior to that, I was working on on-device intelligence features within the software engineering org. And so definitely,
I'm sorry, but I gotta pause you there. Apple Intelligence is a hot topic, okay? A lot of people are pretty interested in it working, and the consensus, take my opinion out of it, the consensus online is that it does not work. I am curious, what was your experience working there? And I guess, can you talk about it? Because it is kind of odd. Like, we expect really polished late entry on most products from Apple. And so seeing Apple not come up with something, a year into ChatGPT was not surprising. I mean, or it shouldn't have been surprising to anybody. And then when Apple Intelligence finally came out, I mean, personally, the only thing I do with it is I right-click on a block of text and I can hit proofread. Even though I'm a heavy user of ChatGPT and otherwise, that is, I guess, the fastest way to get there on a Mac. So, okay, that's neat. But it's, not very valuable. I'll give a counter where with Genmoji, I think it's, laughably bad, but I sent one to my wife and she's like, hey, this is cool. How do I do this? She has an older iPhone, she can't. Now, of course, unfortunately, that was not a driver to go buy a new iPhone, but, what some person thinks is silly, someone else is really excited about. So to the extent that you can, I'm kind of curious, how do you think this happened? I mean, because you worked on it, you're an intelligent person, I'm sure, you weren't in charge of it, so we're not blaming you, but if you can give any color to the situation, I mean, I'd love to hear it.
I am limited in how much detail that I can go into, but
Sure.
What I will say is that a ton of care is being put into getting that right. And I think it's actually because Apple has so much potential, and indeed the envelope of Apple's ecosystem in our lives is so big that it just makes the problem so hard. So the promise and the peril is kind of contained in the fact that Apple's been an extremely successful company.
Yeah.
And many of the things that eventually it will be super cool to have orchestrated on your behalf when you ask a truly smart digital assistant, like they are irreversible actions performed on your behalf and they're like valuable for that reason.
Yeah.
It's precisely for that reason that because this like transformers and long horizon planning is kind of in its infancy, that this kind of like agentic system was really hard to build given where the technology was at that time. And so the company spent a lot of time thinking about what it could deliver. And I think that one of the things that also is a way in which, one other example of how Apple is a victim of its own success is that when Apple introduces a new capability that horizontally spans the system, it has to think about those implications in the farthest reaching corners of the most successful the second most, still billion plus user operating system that has ever been shipped into the real world. So that just made every decision difficult to make because there would be really valid reasons not to do what was the plan as of yesterday.
Okay, so I'm curious, because we're obviously seeing a lot of this on the enterprise side of things, which it sounds like it's just lower stakes. If you have an agent that goes and does some marketing task for you, that's okay. But if you're deploying an agent to go across 4 or 5 different devices, across 1 billion devices, it has a higher bar of success. So is that a fair characterization? And then do models need to get smarter to solve this problem? Do you have an idea of why or what's the big constraint there besides it just being really a big surface area?
I do think that, you're exactly right, that there is also compounding error. A system that is right 99% of the time over 10 tasks, 10 programmatic tasks, as they would be decomposed into in, the atomic bits of a program that you're actually asking Siri to perform. It's easy to see how that doesn't work out over, when your surface area is 1 billion plus users who theoretically would be exercising that many times a day. I think that is absolutely part of what made it hard. Yeah. But, I think that Apple still has an incredible opportunity to ship something really, really delightful. I think that one of the things that I took away from this experience working on Apple Intelligence was it actually is really important to be super clear with your users about what your autonomous system can and cannot do, so that people aren't left in the lurch about what boundary conditions they couldn't possibly be aware of in terms of the system capability. And that's actually one of the reasons why we, from the get-go, have thought we need to be extremely focused in the beginning about what Isaac is going to do for you autonomously so that we have a clear foundation on which to prove value for you.
I see.
That makes total sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm very curious how teamwork, structure, etc., but I'm sure you can't or don't want to talk about it. So one bomb I'll throw at someone else is, Google has Gemini, makes it's amazing, but my Google Home still doesn't use it. So there's clearly some apprehension to scaling this to large personal devices. And so I don't think Apple isn't alone in that. But anyways, that was a detour. Okay, so you're at Apple, you're working on Apple Intelligence. What happens next?
Yeah. So my co-founder and I lived together since college, actually.
Nice.
And he worked at Apple that whole time as well. He was a firmware engineer on the iPhone team. He went on to do research in the AI/ML org, and then most recently was a manager on a robotics R&D team at Apple. And around the beginning of 2024, we realized that this what was unfolding with AI in digital spaces would eventually, of course, come to the physical world. But we saw absolutely nobody working on an embodied intelligent product like the one we would actually want to put in our living room. And we thought that between the two of us, we knew what the contours of it absolutely needed to be. And that's when we left Apple and got into YC.
Very interesting. And so you had this idea for this integrated platform, this general purpose robot, got into YC. Was it crystal clear right away, or YC? They have an interview process, and you have to have an application.
Where
filled
were
out.
you when you got into YC? What was the state of the product in the company?
Exactly.
Yeah, we had some robots walking around our living room. We actually were working with quadrupeds at the time.
Oh, interesting.
But we actually spent much of the summer talking to people about what would be the most valuable things to do in the home, and that we had technical line of sight to at the time. So it was not immediately clear when we got into YC, and that was there was a lot of door knocking, and talking with people to kind of figure out what real pain points that there were, and that would justify a premium product price tag, no less.
Interesting.
Yeah, but it was a really cool experience. I am really, really grateful both for like the people that I met there, and I also think that, you know, the story of our company absolutely runs through having been a part of YC.
And was there something previous to working on Apple Intelligence that you worked with hardware, or is Weave Robotics in this company the first time you say you like professionally worked with hardware?
Yeah, I think in a strict sense it is. Although in basically every single project that I worked on in my like prior stints, I was working with like on-device intelligence. So in many ways, the problems actually rhyme, because you're dealing with like edge computing and constraints. And I think that that absolutely is infused in what we ultimately are making, Isaac, which is, as much as possible, a private by default product with on-device compute that stores your information locally too, which was a constraint that we like happily adopted because it was a key part of the Apple ethos while I was working on features like focus modes or communication safety.
And so, I mean, to clear that up for the audience too, like on device, like all the compute is on Isaac. Isaac's not constantly pinging the internet to do a bunch of tasks similar to what, you know, a Tesla or a Waymo would do to start driving itself. It's not like it's dependent on an internet connection to do anything, right?
Yeah, exactly. There might be instances where we still require an internet connection. Teleoperation is, of course, one of them.
Yeah.
Like if we're controlling your robot from outside your home, then that's done over the internet. But as much as possible, we want everything to remain on your device because we think that's going to make the best product. It also is a bit of a necessity too, because actually to perform actions that look like fluid motion, you actually have to be outputting, you know, target positions for arms, say, at a pretty high frequency in order to actually do that dexterously too. So there's a way in which it's also totally required for the product.
How do you think about hardware? I mean, everyone, you know, whether you're in AI or not, you're very aware of how fast this stuff is exponentially growing, and like, you know, whatever was hot a day ago is not hot 30 minutes later. How does that affect hardware? I imagine you're using, I don't know, maybe an NVIDIA GPU, maybe something else you can tell us or can't. And how often do you have to iterate on that? And how comfortable are you putting something in Isaac that's very expensive and might have to sit there for a long time?
Yeah, I think that I kind of hope that that trend only continues to play out, because I think that we will only be beneficiaries of greater and greater hardware competence. In a lot of ways, we've been like totally stymied by things, even though they're as good as they've ever been in terms of like the core constituent things that would go into a general purpose robot like Isaac. Like actuators are coming down in their unit economics routinely, so is onboard compute. We do think that the right way to build our product is to build something that is only going to accrue value for you over time, the more time that it spends in your home doing useful things for you, and as we continuously make our models smarter and smarter on your behalf. So this is, again, one of the reasons why it's the right thing to do the hard thing first and ship a general purpose form factor, because then we can gracefully do more tasks over time as we ship over-the-air updates to you as well.
Okay, awesome. And to bring Isaac into reality, there are little robots, vacuum robots around people's houses right now. Tesla Optimus is like, who knows? I don't think there's a date, and if there is, who knows if it's actually true. You mentioned that legged robots will not be getting upstairs this year or next year, which is pretty interesting. And apparently there's a bunch of warehouses with hundreds of figure robots doing tons of manual labor that no one has ever seen with their eyes. And so what is the ballpark release date for Isaac? Maybe give me a quarter or half a year. Give me whatever you're comfortable with, because I'm very curious when people will be able to start playing with this.
Yeah, we want to ship to you and your other peer reservation holders by the end of this year.
Okay, incredible. Yeah, that would be amazing.
This is one of the reasons why it was the right thing to do, to have a focused bet, as focused as possible, while still justifying all that we, while still justifying the product from the get-go. We want to do a few things extremely well, and not only does that make the product more intelligible, it's very helpful to not have tried to boil the ocean with what we promise people.
When is the first time you decided on that date? I'm kind of curious, even with software, it can be like, oh my God, like push an update Friday night and you miss it. I imagine with hardware, it's just even harder, as the saying goes. So when did you pick Q4 2025?
It would have been sometime during YC. So it would have been sometime during the summer, but also after we accumulated more and more evidence that we knew how to collect the right data for the tasks that we were going to promise.
Okay, cool. I've been in more than enough Kickstarters to not hold my breath, but I do hope some of those things don't even show up, or they show up 2 years later. I'm confident I will get a robot from you. And I do hope it is the end of the year, because that would be incredible. Even calling it a year and a half out is pretty amazing.
We're working like crazy to ship it, and I think that that's one of the reasons why we were excited enough to put the video out that you led with at the start, because we hope that it shows people how there absolutely is line of sight on the thing that we said we would build in its form, and the things that it needs to be embodied to doing the thing over a long horizon time lapse.
Yeah. No, I think it was shocking. I think, a lot of people might think, okay, this, if it wasn't autonomous, it was teleop, who cares? But at the end of the day, getting the task done is what, I'm buying a robot to do a thing, and if you do the thing, I don't really care how you do it. And it was great to see this scrappy video in an apartment, because obviously the launch video is very glossy and very cool. And I really put down a reservation because you said I can refund it if I don't want it. And so it was easy, instant reserve for something that looks cool. But now to see it become real, I think it's a great strategy. My recommendation is just keep putting out just random man on the street quality videos of this thing, because that shows it'll actually get the job done.
That's the idea. I think that, you and other reservation holders are totally entitled to those kinds of updates. It's also, I think, frankly, something we want to show off, that this small but mighty team is doing the thing that it said it would in more and more obvious, if incremental ways. I think that this is one of the reasons why I'm really excited about Weave, is we've assembled the kind of team that could do this in a timeline that I think is fairly unheard of. I struggle to think of anybody who's done more with less. So we're excited about the progress too. There's still a ton to do, but being focused on a few core things and then beating that drum is the way that we get to market and kind of realize the promise for people of giving them time back in their homes. And it is kind of these problems are somewhat universal to anybody who has a home and lives in one.
Yeah, no, it's super exciting, and if you ship at the end of the year, you'll break the internet. I'm fairly certain if this is in my house and everyone else's house by the end of the year, no matter what it's doing, it's going to be shocking, and I'm super excited for it. Evan, thank you so much for kind of coming here, telling us about the company, telling us about the robot. We're excited to see it. Any shout outs? Do you need to hire anyone? Do you need people to follow you? Do you need more people to reserve the robot? How could we help you?
Yeah. We have a growing wait list, especially since our launch, so people can find us at weaverobotics.com. They can also find us on the usual socials and follow along for progress updates. We are hiring. We're hiring for ML and then perception, SLAM, and navigation roles. So if people know exceptionally devoted and curious engineers who'd want to join the team too, you can send them my way.
What's the prototype there? Scrappy, interested, tons of experience. What are you looking for?
Yeah, the right candidates can vary depending on the specific role that you're talking about. And I think that in general, we need somebody to bring one area of depth, one core competence that aligns with that job posting. But I think that above all, what we care about is curiosity and doggedness, because there is always going to be more than enough work in a company that's shipping general purpose robots, and we need people who kind of go down to bare metal, whatever that means in their job description.
Okay, awesome. Well, Evan, it's been great having you. Thank you so much for taking time and sharing this with us.
And thanks for having me, all. This was a blast.
Cheers.